Welcome, this is John Hyman from Commercial Real Estate Online. This particular video is all about planning the strategy of managing a shopping centre successfully. And indeed, if you've had something to do with shopping centres, you'll understand that they're very dynamic and shifting environments, full of people, customers and tenants. And of course, at the foundation of a shopping centre will be the landlord with their investment requirements. So this particular video is for my shopping centre managers and leasing specialists, those people that need to drive a shopping centre forward in a performance sense, to improve a shopping centre over time and how to plan that particular strategy. So if you haven't visited us before, the website for us is commercial-realestate-training.com. So let's get on with the program. My name is John Hyman. I also coach many agents and brokers around the world in skills associated with sales, leasing, property management, and also we have a website to do that, which is commercial-realestate-training.com. And if you haven't checked out the other two channels that we have a YouTube channel and also an iTunes channel. So let's go a bit further and into this particular topic, which is the steps of managing a shopping centre successfully. So, the focus of managing a shopping centre, the best way to do it is from a base of facts and local knowledge. And that, of course, is retail knowledge. Look for the issues and the facts of the property, the area, the customers, the tenants. Understand what's going on from a property takeover perspective. Understand what you need to look for and also control. You simply must know the elements of the location and the property at the earliest stages of asset take-up. So when you take up a shopping centre, if it's large, there are many different things to look at. So let's go a bit further and we'll talk about property knowledge. Many inexperienced property managers only know the basics to look for. So they don't understand the fuller aspects of property performance and review. In fact, they probably make a few mistakes. They perhaps don't have a checklist. That is a big problem. They can be overlooking the critical facts of the property, and of course that can be a real problem over time. Ignoring what's happening with the tenants, the customers, the trade, the demographics of the area, all contribute to shopping centre failure. So let's go a bit further, and we'll consider all of the elements. So what would you look at when you're managing a shopping centre or about to take on a shopping centre? Here are some ideas for you. Firstly, I would look at property risk. That is the risk factors of the property by design, by location. To understand what can come at you from the day-to-day operations of the property. Then I'll spend some time looking at the leases to understand what the leases are doing from a cash flow perspective. And of course, when you're looking at leases, you'll look at vacancies. Let's go a bit further. I would look at the tenants to understand what the tenants are doing within the property, if they are indeed complying with their lease occupancy, with their business requirements, and making sure that they are conforming as per the lease conditions. Next, I'll be looking at the maintenance facts of the property to ensure that the property is safe, well maintained, and isn't a drain on cash flow for the landlord. And then I'll look at the factors of occupancy that are current at the moment. Occupancy is many different things, and it relates to vacancy, occupation, expansion, and contraction. The things in a shopping centre that need to be studied to make sure that you are getting the optimal results from the tenancy mix. Of course, once you've got a tenancy mix, you should have a cash flow. And a cash flow involves income, be it gross income, which can be rental, plus the outgoings recovery, the operational costs for the property, and there'll be expenditure, outgoing money for running the property. So the expenditures going out need to be managed to a budget. So the cash flow will be income and expenditure related. And then of course the landlord will have certain requirements relating to reporting and control, because their investment needs to bring them the returns that they're expecting over time. So what else goes on here? Well, I'd look at the competing properties in the area to understand what other shopping centres could be impacting my shopping centre with its custom, with its tenancy mix, with its sales. Of course, you get many different size shopping centres in a location, and the smaller ones are usually impacted by the larger shopping centres. So you need to know how the competing properties are impacting your shopping centre. You can check out the other properties and take plenty of photos and make notes when you review those other properties, and then come back and compare their tenancy mix, their customer demographic, and their size and operation to your property. And lastly, I would look at the improvements in a property, the improvements that are currently operational and would be enhancing the comfort of tenants and the use of the property by customers. Oh, and lastly, before I go, one other factor to consider would be the redundancy of the property. Just how old is it? Is it too old? Is it looking tired? It's interesting to note that tired retail properties, or the older retail properties that are not well maintained, have a real problem in attracting customers, keeping tenants, and keeping a reasonable level of market rental. So let's go a bit further. What else will I look at in the managing of a shopping centre? Well, I'll look at system. And what will system be? Well, I'll develop a system to manage that particular property. And indeed, some of my systems have been modified over time for the different size shopping centres, for the different types of shopping centres. So let's look at some factors. Number one, a planned approach is required, a plan to manage the property. And of course, if you're managing a number of shopping centres over time, then you can actually create a plan that's refined and improved for the type of property. Number two, a system of property handover will help you transition into a new property management and cover all of the important issues. In other words, you won't make errors, or you will minimise the errors. Number three, a system will also help you avoid errors and omissions in gathering all of the critical facts from the landlord, from the tenants, from the location, from the maintenance contractors. Remember those things. Now, lastly, if you need plenty of ideas to work on this checklist format process, I'll just pull up now my article on the website, which will give you some ideas to refer to. And you can go to this particular article on the website and print it for further use. And the heading of the article is a commercial property management handover checklist format. In this particular document, it's quite lengthy. There are many different things to cover, and you can download that document at the website. It's a new property management checklist. So by all means, check it out. So that's at the website. Let's go back now and get back into the slides. So going further about the management of a shopping centre and what you need to do to get started, let's have a look at knowing the facts. Now, the facts of a shopping centre will be specific to its design, its location, the tenants, the tenancy mix, the way in which people move through the property, the regional issues, of course, the geographical issues as well. Many things will impact the facts of the property. So, what do you need to do? You need to look at how you can create a system of property handover where you can explore all the known things and build a focus on important property facts. Now, of course, from the previous slide, I showed you the handover checklist at the website, so please check that out, download that, and use it. Now, I've used various checklists over the years for that particular approach with retail shopping centres, and some of the shopping centres I have controlled and managed and leased have been very large. So that checklist that I mentioned earlier will help you. Of course, checklists are based on location and property type. So let's go a bit further and talk about handover systems. Now, you too can have a different number of checklists for different property types, given the factors of occupancy, leasing, and property operations. Indeed, you'll probably know a good degree about retail shopping centres now, so your list is able to be developed. And of course, the list that I mentioned earlier is there on the website for you to adapt, use, expand relative to your location, your town or your city. So you know your town or city, and you also know the variables of investment performance that apply to the property types. You should also know what the landlord requires from you. So your handover system should help with that. So create your checklists and use them. Over time, you can refine them. So if you need a bit more help with that, I'll pull up another article from the website, and this is where you're asking the right questions in a handover process. This particular article on the website, again, can be printed, and this will help you with asking the right questions in a handover situation. That's commercial property management, how to ask the right questions in a handover. And of course, all the question ideas and the targets of those questions are there for you. So now let's go back to the slides again and go a bit further to help you with your system. And indeed, let's get going with handover systems. So to give you some help here, I'll be giving you a list of bigger issues that I look at when I'm taking on a new property management appointment. And when I say new, I'm talking about something that's large, with many tenants, perhaps over many levels, with a large cash flow, with many lease documents, with plenty of customers going there every day. So you can add to my list, your list, and apply locational factors that will also have an impact on property investment and or occupancy. So let's go into some numbers, and I'll take you to number 1. That is leases and occupancy documents. Now, leases and occupancy documentation relate to the tenants, all of the tenants in occupation. All leases and tenant documents will be different, or expect them to be. So ensure that you're looking for the differences. Read all the leases, read all the occupancy documents, ask questions, review the documents deeply, capture the information that you're seeing. I usually use a synopsis, a lease synopsis, and that is a form where I fill out the information that I'm reading from the lease. I extract the important critical dates, the factors about cash flow, the identities of the tenants and the landlord, the permitted use, the rental recoveries, the rent reviews, the options, all of the things that impact the lease over time. I extract them from the lease and put them on a lease synopsis. And some of the database of agents and brokers online that access my website know that I have a synopsis, and I have shared that before. So let's go a bit further here now and look at another lease and occupancy document issue. So a deep and meaningful review is done of all the paperwork, as mentioned. As you review all of the lease documentation, capture the critical dates and the rental information into a software diary system or your property management software. Now, many of you will already know the more complex your property, the larger the tenancy mix, the larger the cash flow, you will require a good property management software program to support your activities, your directions when it comes to leases, watching the critical dates, processing rental changes, etc. Let's go a bit further and have a look at the tenancy mix and the tenants. So the tenancy mix and the tenants. When you review all of the tenants in occupancy, you will find factors relating to tenant proximity, vacancy and occupancy conflict. That means that some tenants are not perhaps operationally good to have near others. You need to look at the clusters and how tenants are positioned near other tenants, and of course how customers move past each tenancy space. Is there something you can do to encourage sales for each tenant by changing the flow of customers? If your property has a number of entrances, then you'll need to consider the traffic flow through those entrances by customers each day of the week and throughout the year to see how those numbers are changing. And then, of course, you can then go back to the tenancy mix and look at the proximity of tenants to each other, the vacancy factors and occupancy conflict. In other words, you play with the tenant clusters and improve the clusters so that customers stop and buy. That's how you build a successful retail shopping centre. Let's go a bit further and look further into the tenancy mix and tenant issues. So any property containing many tenants will require a full review, a full tenant mix review. As I said earlier, some tenants are better than others from an investment perspective. So you'll also need to assess relevance and occupancy strength with each tenant as part of the property review. Make sure your tenant is successful. And if you've got some weak tenants in occupancy, then try and help them resolve that. And if indeed they can't resolve their trade problems, then indeed they need to be moved on when the time is right and they get to lease end. Ultimately, you want good tenants in your shopping centre to make sure that the cash flow is strong, that the rentals are coming in, the market rent is strong, and the vacancy factors are low. So let's go a bit further and look into other tenancy mix factors, and most particularly, when you identify the weaknesses in occupancy, You should plan to replace or move the tenant as appropriate at the right time in the future to suit the investment. And the right time will be under the terms of the lease. You can't just remove a tenant from the building, from the property, without due regard for the terms of the lease. And you'll also be looking at lease renewals, options, expiry dates, expansion factors, contraction needs, and clustering. Now, a cluster of tenants to me is a cluster of about 4 or 5 tenants in a particular zone, and they need to complement each other. So once you get away from the tenancy mix issues, you get into the number 3, which is cash flow. Now, the cash flow from the income of a property will be critical to the investment performance. So what is cash flow? Of course, it's rental. But you need to look at how that rent is also spent in operational costs for the property, the expenditure. And you also need to look at the recoveries from the tenant when it comes to outgoings recoveries under the terms of the leases. That then takes you back into the issue of reviewing every lease to make sure that you are recovering operational costs from each tenant as appropriate under the terms of the lease. Let's go a bit further with cash flow. So look for the financial factors, the pressures relating to income change, and of course expenditure. Understand the net income stream and what will change for the asset over time and how it can be improved or enhanced through the life cycle of the property. If you're managing or leasing the retail property, it's your job to enhance the asset. You're there to replace the tenants at the right time with better tenants. You're there to help the tenants move into better locations. You're there to improve the customer interest in the property. That's how you improve cash flow. Let's go further. So ultimately, you become the strategist relating to an investment property. You are the specialist in investment performance and rental. Now, the stability of cash flow over time should improve for the client in a realistic and relevant way. And as the specialist for property management and leasing for the area, you should have a few ideas as to how you can improve the cash flow. Don't just manage the property, improve the cash flow, improve the tenancy mix, improve the property overall. Let's go further now into number 4, which is maintenance. Now, maintenance, that is the property maintenance. Review the physical aspects of the property for maintenance and repair in its current condition. Look for elements of risk and damage that can be a threat to occupancy or public safety. Key issues, they can create a lot of risk for you. There'll also be an insurance risk to consider here as part of the maintenance review. Indeed, the insurers for the property may want to look at the property, the new property that the owners just bought. Understand the building codes and safety codes that apply to the property in its design and as part of its day-to-day function. Make sure, of course, that the building codes and the safety codes are complied with and to. And lastly, the maintenance and safety codes will change from time to time in the building. So review the property and all the things for current building code compliance. Make sure that you are doing the right thing, because the threat of risk and litigation is very high in property management and leasing. Let's go a bit further and look at risk management. Now, risk management, any factors of risk can be identified early and resolved before they impact occupancy or financial performance. That's the rule. So work with the maintenance contractors within the building to understand where property upgrades and cost controls can occur. Now, a staged process of property management and maintenance will help reduce the risks within the property over time. Now, to a degree, your budget, your expenditure budget for maintenance will help reduce risks as long as you understand what needs to be done, where it needs to be done, and how it needs to be done. That's why you should talk to your maintenance contractors frequently about how the property is going, what they're seeing, and what they know is about to fail when it comes to property maintenance issues. So let's go further into a big topic, and that is budgeting and forecasting. So if you are managing a shopping centre, the budget that you create and the forecasting process is critical. In budgeting and forecasting, there are financial differences here to understand as part of the property management process. A budget is something that applies to both income and expenditure over time. Yes, I said income and expenditure over time. The active words, over time. That means that throughout a 12-month period, you should know how the income will change and the expenditure will change within reason based on lease occupancy, tenants in occupation, the threat of vacancies, and the expenditure factors to maintain, manage and run the property legally. So, the forecasting process is an extension of the budget given cash flow, that is current cash flow, issues and known changes to cash flow over time. So the forecast is something that's used extensively in the larger properties, the larger shopping centres that you would be managing, and hopefully you are managing a few large properties of that type. The forecasting process is a professional thing. It's something you develop and improve when it comes to the budget of income and expenditure and the actual cash flow throughout the year. The forecast allows you to move the expected cash flow over the 12-month period. So, you take the factors of the budget and you apply those factors to a forecasting process. You look for the upcoming issues of occupancy and building use, where the forecasts could change and threaten the investment performance over time. As the specialist, as the property manager, you are there to control any threats, any risks to investment performance over time. Now, most major assets under property management today have a forecasting process as part of investment control. The larger the property, the deeper the forecasting process, and indeed the need for a more professional forecasting process. So let's go a bit further. And let's have a look at property stability. So property stability is, from the previous point, a factor of strategy and awareness. Now, if you're the leasing person or the property manager, it's up to you to bring those factors of strategy and awareness to the property, to the landlord, to the tenants, to control those factors. Of course, vacancies will always be an issue for some landlords and properties. Strategies to provide stability will always be available if you think about it. If you're close to your tenants, if you're close to the landlord and you understand what's going in the property when it comes to customer interest and sales, you can do something there with your vacancies. So let's go a bit further. Stability comes from a fine balance across leases, tenants and risk management. And perhaps I should add to that, customers. Watch all of those things closely and manage them well. So lastly, let's look at one particular thing which should always be spoken about, and that is the landlord targets and reporting. Every landlord is different, of course. They will have targets and reports to consider. Some corporate landlords have very stringent requirements when it comes to understanding their cash flow, their forecasts, their leases and the tenants in the mix. Of course, you need to design reports that will help the landlord keep in control. So those reports will cover income, expenditure, forecasting, lease detail, tenant mix changes, and tenant meetings. Now, a fully informed client is a client that you can work with over time. Indeed, when the client is becoming unhappy or starting to move away from working strongly with their property manager, it's usually because the client is not fully informed and there's not enough communication between the property manager and the landlord client. It's a sad fact. It's something that always happens when the property manager is snowed under with too much work, too many tenants, too many properties, and they just can't do the job properly. It happens, unfortunately, quite a lot. So let's go a bit further. The facts. The factor of the matter is these. Number one, take all of these things to the next level. Look at creating a planned approach to property management issues. That's number one. Number two, develop some strategies to apply to each client and each property. With retail properties and shopping centres, consider the best retail checklist for the fullest property control. Now, you can create that checklist. Remember earlier I gave you the checklist from my website, which will help you get started. And lastly, number three, learn from the other properties and clients that you work with now from a leasing and a management perspective. Build a great property management business. It's easy to do as long as you focus on quality, knowledge and systems. So, coming to the end of the slides here, I will take you to the overall article where you can perhaps print the whole article if you like, and that will give you further information to relate to when it comes to managing a shopping centre. This particular article talks about the right ways to manage commercial properties, shopping centres, And this particular shopping centre I had something to do with, and it's in Singapore. So the article is there. There are many different ideas for you to print off and use, so please do so. That is at the website. The title of the article is The Right Ways to Manage Commercial Properties, and you can search for that article in the search field, which is on the right-hand side of the column in the website. So my name is John Hyman. I'm glad that you've visited us today and listened to this particular video. As I said before, I cover many different topics at the website: sales, leasing, property management. The website is commercial-real-estate-training.com. And of course, you can visit the YouTube channel and get all of the videos. There's several hundred there. And you can also visit iTunes and download the podcasts. In closing off, it's interesting to note that commercial and retail property management is perhaps, in my opinion, one of the most skillful parts of the industry. And if you've got a good team of property managers in your brokerage, in your agency, you can always win more business successfully. Property managers keep clients happy for a longer period of time and, of course, supply the leasing and the sales team with stock over time. Indeed, some of the buildings in this particular slide I have had a lot to do with, particularly over time, from a leasing, a management and an asset performance perspective. So these particular buildings, some of them are critical to a particular ownership that I've had something to do with in the last 15 years, and I'm very proud to say that those buildings are still highly successful. So my name is John Hyman. Thank you for listening to this particular video. Of course, you can check out the website. You've heard me mention it before, which is commercial-real-estate-training.com. I hope you got plenty of information from this program, and we'll catch you again very soon online with another video program. This is John Hyman signing off for now.